Okay, so you know what it's time for? It's patch note time, because not only did we get the challenge mode today, yes, that's right, gamers, we also got some world polish. They actually fixed a bunch of bugs, and some really key ones too, by the way. So Su 1 was still doing the weird thing where the final boss of Dragon's Den was swapping sides on the platform all over the place. Very annoying. This is about the third time they've said they fixed it, so who knows? Maybe it actually is fixed this time. You never know. Something that's pretty cool as well, actually, is that DirectX 11 is no longer in beta. It's actually, you know, essentially part of the official game now, which is really cool. That's a nice feature, so you can probably enable that, and you won't crash, and it'll be a good time. Hasn't been crashing for a while, to be fair, but still. That's pretty good. Not too bad. Okay, a few just tweaks over there, just some minor bug fixes. But yeah, the key bug fixes for sure. Definitely towards, again, the Dragon's End boss with Su 1. Other than that, just some minor stuff. And then also, there's some other fun stuff that happened as well in raids, actually. There has been a very long-standing bug with Sabir where you can basically make the boss do literally nothing and just sit there like a lemon. That's now been fixed. Nice. Very, very good stuff. On the Strike Mission Challenge mode, they actually buffed the rewards a little bit here. So the rewards are now 2 gold. There's an extra gold for clearing the challenge mode now. So that means you'll get 3 gold for each strike mission that you complete on challenge mode. That's all they did. So, I mean, hey, not too bad, I guess. You know, gold is gold. I think it's still a pretty lackluster, especially considering that the actual unique skins you get from this look like this, right? This is the new reward, the Aether Blade Shank from Anka CM that we just cleared right now. It's actually RNG too, so I didn't get it. You can buy it, but all the achievements are bugged as of right now, so I can't buy it actually. But yeah, this is what it looks like. I mean, it's simple. If you're into that sort of thing, it looks good. Otherwise, it is basically a toothpick. Not ideal. And yeah, it doesn't really hold up to a lot of the other stuff in the game, particularly the stuff in the gem store, which kind of sucks, but oh well, that's how it goes. If you like simple skins, you like them. Actually, a very interesting change here, by the way. This is something that I suspected actually was a bug. And it was this. Fix an issue that caused the exposed effect used in strike missions to be removed if the target was downed. So in other words, this was a weird mechanic in my mind because you would get hit by a mechanic, get punished, right, for this, because you take more damage when you eat a mechanic. But then if you go down state, your punishment's gone. It's supposed to last for a minute, but you would lose it really quickly. Go down state, then you have, you know, your like 30 seconds left of exposed is gone. This is actually a significant increase in difficulty. It will punish you way harder for failing these mechanics. This actually applies right now on Harvest Temple. If you push the orb out, you'll get exposed from a shockwave. And on Mitrin CM, you know, she fires a bunch of cones and all the shockwave stuff. That will also apply this. That actually makes it a fair bit harder and more punishing. You're gonna have to be more careful with your mechanical execution. Design-wise, I think this is a very good change, actually. I'm a big fan of this. In terms of design, I think that's how the mechanic should have originally worked, and it is essentially a bug. There was also a slight adjustment here as well to Echo of Scarlet Briar. Now, when you break the boss, it actually gets stunned for 10 seconds. I'm not a big fan of this. I don't like stunning bosses in general. I think having exposed last longer is okay, so you have this big burst window after breaking a Defiance bar. But I am not a huge fan of just making the boss sit there and do nothing for a large amount of time. We actually did this, I tested this just now actually, and it has made the fight significantly easier in terms of in terms of like blasting the boss down really, really quickly and essentially avoiding mechanics because the boss can't attack, right? So you have a lot less damage coming in. It does actually make it easier, particularly if you have high damage and you can capitalize on the exposed debuff. So I'm not super happy about that, but hey, it is what it is, right? It is what it is. But anyway, that's all the stuff for strike missions. But now we get to the real meat, because there's no PvE balance, but we do have some PvP and world versus world balance. This is actually something that was alluded to in the previous balance patch, and here we go. And actually, really exciting to see this. A lot of focus on world versus world and addressing some of the common complaints that players have. Specifically, just a bit of a heads up here, ranged damage is being looked at, right? Has been reduced significantly, and you can probably already see from some of these notes here that range damage on a lot of the key world versus world professions is going down significantly, and a few other things that are a little weird, right, that you might not see. This change to Reaper, for example, is something that you do see, but usually in more high-level play, not necessarily in your usual world versus world gameplay, more like stuff like GVG is where you see this stuff. But anyway, let's take a look. So, Rise is a skill that we've seen a lot of feedback around following the last set of balance changes. One of the primary issues with the skill is the number of minions that it's capable of summoning, as these minions can potentially soak up a lot of damage while also creating damage threats via Death Nova. To address this, we've reduced the target cap of the skill, which will both reduce the number of minions summoned and increase the cooldown of the skill by granting fewer hits of cooldown reduction from Augur of Death. Yeah, so basically Augur of Death is the Reaper shout trait. It gives you shout cooldown reduction, and every target you hit with a shout, it gives you further cooldown reduction. It's 5% per hit, so it's a lot of cooldown reduction. So this is I'm not familiar enough with GVG to fully make this determination, but this actually seems like it's dead, right? Because this is an absolute nuke to this ability. It's having the target cap reduced by 60% from 5 to 2, and the cooldown is essentially going up, and the Death Nova damage is also going down significantly. I do not see that skill being used there. No way. That is a massive nuke. So that will shift up the meta a little bit. Not to say that Reaper is bad, because you still have very high damage and corruption potential on Reaper. So it's not the death knell for Reaper, but certainly a nerf to it, and a nerf to this kind of soaking up of damage and kind of obnoxious playstyle that was emerging there, making it a little uninteractive and unfun to play against. So yeah, that makes sense. Just for those, just for a bit of clarification here, when they're talking about soaking damage, abilities in Guild Wars 2, as you probably know, have a target cap of 5, right? So if you can create loads of little targets, right, then your damage will end up being wasted on the little minions, right, instead of the players, massively increasing your durability. Kind of a fun fact here, by the way, actually, guys. So here's a fun fact about this, is that there was a time when there was like a bugged rune. Rune of the Golemancer was bugged, and the golem had way more health than it should. And there was a time in World War where everyone was like running around with these golems, just soaking up loads of damage. It was really, really, it was quite amusing, but there it is, right? Another World vs. World goal for this update is to bring down some of the primary sources of ranged area of effect damage to create more opportunities for melee pushes. Range versus melee is always going to be a delicate balance, as we do want both options to be viable and indeed important, right? You want range and melee to be good. We currently feel that range pressure is too high, and we're making some adjustments. And you're going to see this throughout all of the changes. You can already see Rev lurking down here. That's obviously going to get one of the key range DPSs there as well. And some changes that they made recently to like lowering sustain a little bit on Firebrand and on Scrapper, and making Bubble less disruptive. This actually did kind of inhibit pushing a little bit. Not a crazy amount. You do still see melee pushes, obviously, but it certainly swung the balance a little bit with the way that the game was played a little bit, and this is kind of like the counterbalance to put it back in line. This involves bringing down the damage of Well of Suffering and Well of Corruption. Unholy Feast is also being brought back down to its previous damage value, as the increase from the previous update pushed it a bit higher than it needed to be. Yeah, I believe... I think this is actually an almost exact reversion of Unholy Feast. It was a bit of like a random change. It's a fun skill to use, actually, and it will still be good because it's an AoE corrupt, which is actually one of the main purposes of playing a Necromancer, particularly a Scourge, is to corrupt boons, not necessarily to have this crazy damage output. And you see the same thing, Well of Corruption. Power coefficient is going from 0.35 to 0.28. It's a pretty big nerf to both these wells. If you look at this, right, 0.9 to 0.65 on Well of Suffering, and then also a nerf to Well of Corruption. That's a significant reduction in the key range spike damage of Necromancers and Scourges in particular, right? Because you just block those wells out and then boom, you just nuke hard. Is Necro going to be bad? Absolutely not. Like, Necro is definitely not going to be bad because of these changes. However, is it going to significantly reduce the amount of range spike? Yes, which is probably good. You know, that is definitely where you want to be with this stuff, particularly when it's kind of... A lot of these wells are pulsing attacks as well, which makes them, in a way, a little bit hard to deal with because you can't just like necessarily avoid them. You're going to have to completely move out of them. And they're also unblockable too, which kind of complicates things because wells are pretty spooky. But Necro is definitely not going anywhere. Like, Necro has been a mainstay of World vs. World because of boon removal since the dawn of time, and it will continue to do so. This is, and again, these changes are not isolated to Necro. You'll see that across the board, range DPS is going down. And here we go. Let's take a look. Coalescence of Ruin and Face Smash, both getting nerfed. These are the Hammer 2 and 3 skills. There's a very kind of classic combo where you'll use both of these skills essentially simultaneously to leverage a huge spike of damage at range. This is it's not a crazy nerf. It's, I want to say, around 20% of a nerf approximately on both of these. So that, I mean, well, that is a lot of damage if you think about it. It's a lot less damage, particularly when you think how many revs you're going to have at the same time. And that, yeah, I mean, it's hard to really comment on this really because it's like they already explain what it's doing. It's hopefully going to reduce the amount of range damage so that you can actually kind of get in close without getting immediately eviscerated in one shot. You're still going to get one shot. Okay, let's be honest here, guys. You're still going to get blown up at range because of how many players there are. If you're out of position, you get hit by like 10 AoEs. Yeah, you're still dead. But the goal is that if you're correctly stacked up and everyone's healing, everyone's sustaining, everyone's using defensives and evading correctly, this will allow you to be a lot more aggressive in melee here as well. And now we see a few changes to PvP. Yeah, look at Rev. Oh my god, Rev. Oh, yeah. So for those who are not keeping up with PvP and stuff like that, Renegade was the terror of Path of Fire, but Vindicator is absolutely the terror of End of Dragons. Specifically, there are some really annoying builds that are very bunkery, right? And have a huge amount of sustain and also kind of built-in team support that makes them very annoying to play against and can really slow down the game. And it really looks that like ArenaNet and CMC is looking to speed up the gameplay. There's a lot of damage right now with Untamed and Willowbender and Harbinger, but I think we're definitely moving to a much more aggressive meta, and this build here that's being nerfed now is essentially one of the things that's been popping up a little bit, this kind of bunker Vindicator, but they want to keep the main Vindicator build intact, like the more aggressive builds intact here, as you can see here, because they're looking at scaling, not base values on some of the sustained stuff. Well, there are a few base values, but yeah. Let's take a look. We want to keep the, Vindicators continue to overperform in PvP, largely due to the defensive strength of the Kurzik side of Legendary Alliance stance. We want to keep the energy costs on the lower side to maintain the flow when switching between the two sides, but the cooldowns of Tree Song and Battle Lance make them too easy to use repeatedly while staying on the Kurzik side. These abilities were insane, by the way. When you look at these numbers, they are ridiculous. So let's look at Tree Song. Tree Song, what it was 5 Condis, area of effect, by the way, and you got endurance for removing for each target you hit, with a 3-second cooldown, and it healed per condition removed. That was ridiculous. Absurd, ridiculously broken. This is still a good skill, by the way. 3 conditions removed, and it heals, and you get endurance back on an 8-second cooldown. Yeah, that's still a good skill. And that, I think that's what they're trying to do here. They're really looking at the bunker style stuff. And you can see here that they're also nerfing the Saint Shield, which is the healing and barrier dodge roll, to bring down the sustainability of the Avatar build specifically. There was this Avatar bunker Vindicator, running stuff like Salvation. Really, really disgusting. So they don't want you to get so much value out of your healing power there. Honestly, I think the base value might still be a little crazy. I think it's still going to be very, very strong. But Vindicator losing all of this cleanse definitely makes it more vulnerable to a lot of stuff like Harbinger, which can kind of bust through it now pretty effectively with the increased cooldown and the reduced AoE cleanse. There's a big sustain nerf. And Battle Lance, again, a massive, massive cooldown increase. 3 seconds going up to 10 seconds. I think a lot of Vindicator abilities on launch were actually just not split, right? You know, and this is an evade ability, but I'll just show the skill because you may not be familiar with it. Battle Dance is an evade backwards, granting boons to allies. So you evade back, which is a 1-second evasion, which is great for sustaining, obviously, and kind of chaining between your dodges, so you have that evasion uptime. And you also apply very nice boons, too, to your allies. So that was an incredibly strong skill that allowed you to survive. So huge nerf to balance there as well. This is certainly going to make Vindicator a lot healthier, but it will still make the more aggressive builds, so the Berserker Amulet builds, still work out just well. You just won't have quite the same level of insane support at the same time. While the defensive side of the Vindicator has been strong, its offensive capability has been a bit less impressive since the Adjust to Eternity's Rock. Yeah, this ability got deleted, right? This is the Great Sword 5 skill, the Meteor Shower thing. So they've given it more damage. Again, they're trying to encourage this more aggressive playstyle. So they want to encourage you to not play Salvation, because right now, even if you play Berserker Amulet, a lot of revs are actually playing this kind of bunkery 1v1 style build with the Salvation trait line, and they want to encourage you to play aggressively and try to use your damage to actually generate kills, right? To kind of nudge it more towards that, probably that roamer, slightly more roamery, more teamfighty role, rather than like this really, really slow thing, which is pretty good, and that's exactly what they've done here. So, Phantom's Onslaught increased the power coefficient from 1.18 to 1.13 in PvP in World vs. World. Scavenger Burst, power coefficient from 1.25 to 1.55 in PvP only. Nomad's Advance, okay, the power coefficient is 2.0 to 2.3. Dude, some of these are actually a little scary, guys. These are actually a little spooky right now. So, Phantom's Onslaught, this is the third skill on Greatsword, so you can have leap forward, then slash at people. So, hey, a little bit more damage on some of your mobility is always good if you can connect that. And just overall, these are some pretty significant increases here. Spear of Archimeros is the energy is going down and the damage is going up as well. I think this ability is a little bit awkward to land, so I'm not really sure if that's going to do too much, but it actually can hit pretty hard, right? No joke. It can actually really blast people down. Man, Nomad's Advance, that is going to actually hit like a truck if you spec into it now, actually. So Nomad Advance is a skill on the Alliance stance on the Luxon side, right? So basically it's a movement skill. It's like the opposite of Battle Dance. So you leap in, right? And then you kind of gain might for hitting people, if I recall correctly, I think. Yeah, that's correct, yeah. I'll just show you the skill here. So you just leap in like this. So it's mobility, and you just hit. Dude, it's 3.5 in PvE. Oh my god, that's insane, right? But yeah, in PvP, it's 2.3. So a lot of damage now can be connected there. And just increasing that is just to encourage the players to be more aggressive. Makes sense, right? Elementalist. Elementalist is another profession getting a pair of adjustments for some of its more potent ranged damage skills, namely Meteor Shower and the Firestorm from Fiery Greatsword. Meteor Shower reduced the power coefficient from 1.1 to 0.88 in World vs. World only. Now, to be clear, this is still going to hit damn hard, right? Weaver, before this patch, guys, if you play well, you're going to be top damage. You are a monster. You've got ascended food, you have infusions, you have ascended gear, right? You have, non-PvP balance. You are actual artillery with this build. You destroy people. So this is still going to be really strong. Conjure Fiery Greatsword, the Firestorm ability, reduced the maximum number of targets struck to 10 to 5 in World vs. World only. Now, Firestorm, that's the 5th skill, I think, right? If I believe it is, yeah, it is indeed the 5th skill. So that's like the Rain of Fire you do. That is a bit of a nerf, to be fair. 50% reduction on that? Goodness me. That is more of a, that's more of a bringing it more in line with just everything else, right? Like, the game has moved away from 10 target, it's moved towards 5 target now, so that just makes a lot of sense, right? But yeah, that is pretty extreme. And, you know, honestly, that skill, it's interesting because it was not the easiest thing to get off, right? It's a 900 range skill, I believe, or maybe even 600. You have to actually really expose yourself to get that off, so it can definitely be punished, and it's an elite skill. It's 600 range, I just checked. I think the way to go would maybe be, maybe just reduce the damage on it rather than the target cap. Or I think, nah, maybe just normalize it, right? You could give it maybe a little bit more damage perhaps now because of that, or maybe reduce the cooldown to go along with this because you have a lower target cap. I think that will be okay, seeing as it's an elite skill and it has a very long cooldown. And the same thing with Fire Eruption. That's the 2nd skill that makes the little lava font pop up. So you get 5 targets now as well. Yeah, I think maybe, yeah, viable LE spec detected, nerfs erected. However, just saying, Elementalist is still going to be good in World vs. World as your extreme range damage artillery option. So yeah, Firestorm and Meteor Shower are still good, yeah. Again, this Fire Action nerf, it's just like we're making sure that everything's 5 target, not 10 target, right? Like it's clear they want to move away from that. Guardian. Finishing up the range damage adjustments for this update are a pair of changes for Guardian, bringing down the damage of Symbol of Punishment and Sword of Justice. And there's some big stuff here. So, one, they nerfed down the damage significantly on these, and that might not look like a big change. You're going, wait a minute, 0.33 to 0.28. Bear in mind that symbols pulse, so you get this number over and over and over again, right? Same with Sword of Justice. Sword of Justice also multi-hits, right? So it's actually a more significant nerf than you might think. And some of these changes are definitely a little, these changes aren't like massive nerfs. Not like crazy nerf. That, you know, so like 20% nerf, like 15% nerf, which is definitely a big nerf, but it's not like a nuke. Well, except for Reaper, unlucky buddy. Because I think they want to make sure that range is good, right? They want to be a little incremental to make sure. Okay, see this, see what happens, and bear in mind that a small change in world versus world can be very impactful because of how many players there are, right? There are so many players that if you nerf a power coefficient or buff a power coefficient, then oh my goodness. That's a lot of, you know, that's a lot of damage you've suddenly removed, right? At that point. And yeah, it is actually that's a really good point actually to bring up there. Bear in mind, guys, that when you nerf range, you buff melee. So that actually necessarily means that stuff like Reaper's going to be better. Stuff like, say, a power spellbreaker is going to end up being better, right? In World vs. World in these zones. Because if you can reliably melee more, which is a little difficult to do, particularly in the larger scale stuff, then you're going to get more value out of your melee builds too. So that's also yeah, Greatsword Berserker, right? Like the other side of this is that things kind of get buffed because the things that were really good at shutting them down got nerfed as well. So that's why they're being a little bit they're being careful with some of these changes because they don't want to skew the gameplay too much in the other direction. So these changes are actually pretty damn big. Like nerfing the charge count is big. That means you're going to run out of steam quicker in terms of your range spike. And if they keep getting evaded and you keep missing them basically, then you're not going to have any, right? You're going to be burned down much quicker. And again, these are pulsing attacks, so you're probably looking around a 20% nerf on both of these abilities too. So yeah, and what can I say? It's good. Like if you add up all these changes, it really does amount to a lot. It really does. Yeah, the charge count is massive, though. That is huge. Not being able to store them up and spike with them, right, and continuously do damage is absolutely massive. That is going to impact the playability of stuff like DPS Guardian significantly, right? It's hard when you're dealing with small numbers to do a nerf like that. I think if you're going to do something like this, yeah, you know, we'll have to see. If this is an over nerf, which it may well be, maybe you give it the charge back, but you just increase the count recharge instead, right? So you have like a longer cooldown, but you have you know, you have the same amount of charges. Engineer. Here we go. Mechanist has continued to be a dominant force in PvP. And for this update, we've taken a harder look at some of its defensive capabilities. Rectifier Signet in particular is an extremely potent source of healing, especially in combination with the Grandmaster trait Mech Core J Drive, which is something that basically means when you use the skill, you still keep the passive. So in other words, you can use the Signet and get the sustained healing at the same time, which is very good, by the way, considering the passive healing and the actual activation healing is really good. It's something that needed to come down. We've also made another slight adjustment to mech frame channeling conduits to further reduce the Mechanist alacrity uptime. Oh, again. Oh, yeah, I actually thought, yeah, called it. I actually thought they were going to nerf this again, and they did. So there it is. It was a harsh nerf last time. It was like 1/3 of the alacrity uptime. Now we're going down to 1/4 of the original alacrity uptime from 3 to 4 seconds. So it was 1 second, then it was 3, now it's 4. Finally, we have an adjustment to the Engineer's shield codes. Honestly, I'm pretty hyped to see that. Even NG mains want shield to be nerfed to an extent, okay? Because everyone knows it's kind of a busted weapon, and actually it's one of the key issues that has made a lot of engineer builds kind of annoying. It's certainly a big part of why Hollow was so good with grenades. It's definitely a big part of why Prot Hollow was so good, and it's certainly, combined with Alacrity, is why Mechanist is so good at surviving. These nerfs are... This is kind of demolition. Like, with the overshield, the cooldown of overshield, so we bumped up the cooldowns of both Magnetic Shield and Static Shield. So, Rectifier Signet, pulse heal from 230 to 140. That's about 33%, nearly 50% nerfs. More like 40% even, actually. Mech Frame, so this is your, whenever you apply... this is basically the barrier into alacrity thing. You can do that every 4 seconds now, instead of every 3. Magnetic Shield, 25 to 30, and Static Shield, which is the block. So Magnetic Shield is the reflect and the knockback, and Static Shield is the 40-second cool, is the block, right? And then you can throw it out and like boomerang it for a stun. Honestly, Mech Mech was probably on the way out a little bit anyway. People were starting to move away from it. I mean, Vindicator got nerfed too. People were moving over to Vindicator a little bit more. Does this actually kill Mech? In PvP, I feel like this is actually really, really harsh, or a really severe nerf. This might be enough to kind of shove Mechanist out of the metagame. I'd be a little surprised, because again, it already got nerfed a lot and was starting to see a little bit less play, but I think players are certainly going to be looking at other options, right? They're going to be looking at other options now for that kind of duelist role over the Mechanist, because you are going to be a lot squishier, a lot easier to kill. Maybe it can kind of still cling on, but with less alacrity, higher cooldowns, and significantly less sustained healing. That's a little bit of a tough sell. Like, Mech definitely getting the hammer here. For sure. I think it's going to be super interesting to see what people come up with, right? Yeah, people are going to try Blade Sword now as that duelist with sustain and some teamfight presence. If people are going to try Catalyst, that may be a little copium there on Catalyst just yet, but, you know, with some additional changes, maybe down the line, you could certainly see these other things starting to emerge, of course. But yeah, I think this is good, you know. Okay, right. I'm actually going to pet the NG mains, guys. So the good news here is that because Shield, which has kind of been a problematic skill set in NG for a long time, is being nerfed. This does actually give ArenaNet the option to now buff Hollowsmith and Scrapper, right? Because as long as Shield is really good, nerfing this on core Ellie, right? Core NG. Ellie did it. Ellie, NG, same thing. Nerfing this across the board means that they can make the elite specs better. Because the problem with having a really strong core toolkit, it's a bit like Guardian, right? Is that every elite spec can use that really strong core toolkit. So if the core toolkit's too good, then you can't make the elite specs ultra giga strong. Otherwise, they're just going to be incredibly overpowered, right, when you combine the two things together. So nerfing down the core kit a little bit gives them some breathing room there. So don't give up hope, my friends. Do not give up hope. Enjoy it. But yeah, just as a final conclusion there, Mechanist was really obnoxious to play against. I actually am of the opinion that Mechanist is unhealthy inherently because of how AI focused it is. So I actually think that the intention of this is to essentially remove it from a lot of competitive play. So I'm down with that, and I think that if that isn't enough, it will probably get hit again, right, and be nerfed again in PvP because it's just obnoxious. This is not fun. Ranger. We've enjoyed seeing the recent performance of the Untamed specialization in PvP. Yeah, look, you know, CMC, he loves it. He loves Tail Swipe, he loves the one-shots. It's clear that the damage of Drake's Tail Swipe is a bit too high, and we're going to bring it down a notch. I want to find this clip. Let me find this clip, guys. There was a hilarious clip on Shorts' channel. Check this out, guys. Check this out. I'm just going to show you. I'm going to give you this, because you're going to enjoy this. So, Shorts was just having a good time playing some ranked PvP, playing Virtuoso. You know, he's a Mesmer main. He loves playing Mesmer. He's all about it. Okay, let's just go ahead and see what happens when he goes to fight Shadowfall, a powerful team, a powerful gamer on the NA server. Here he comes, and there's the stun, and there's the tail swipe, and he is one shot. And look, you actually don't even see his health bar move there, by the way. That is like an actual flat one shot. He goes 100 to 0 in less than 1 second. The tail swipe combined with the ambush attack, it doesn't go very well for him there. So probably a spec that needs to be kept an eye on there. That's pretty good. Definitely check out my boy Shorts as well. NA Gaming, love to see that. Shorts Gaming, and yeah, just dodge, right? Just dodge, to be honest. I mean, like, that's the obvious answer. And like, it's clear that the damage of the Drake's tail swipe is a bit too high, and we're gonna bring it down. This ability was degen, okay? Like, especially now with Untamed's ability to kind of teleport onto someone and then directly use the tail swipe. Because normally, pet abilities that can be really strong, like tail swipe, they're kept in check by the fact that the player can't control them. Funnily enough, that actually makes it really frustrating to play against because it kind of limits the counter playability because it's, you know, it's going to like randomly meme you sometimes, which is fun. But yeah, the damage, this has been something that's been really, really strong with Untamed and is not that much fun to play against. So bit of a damage up there. It's still going to hit pretty damn hard, to be fair. 0.9 to 0.72. It's still going to slap you, but it's not just going to delete you so much anymore. But I think there's definitely a few other things on Untamed that need to be maybe looked at as well, because the amount of burst damage it can deliver is pretty crazy, particularly with the port combo. However, I don't want to go to a bunker meta, right? We want to have a lot of damage. So stuff like Untamed that can bunker bust alongside Willbender and Harbinger, I think these things are pretty okay, for sure. And Untamed, it is pretty squishy compared to stuff like Willbender. Like Willbender, it's really good because it has insane damage output and has great support components, and also it's quite durable when you play it correctly, and it has great defensive cooldowns. Untamed, a little bit less so. It's a bit easier to punish, and it's not exactly a one-trick pony, it's more like a 2 or 3 trick pony, but I think if players figure out how to play against it, it will get better. It's still maybe a little unfun and uninteractive with the way it can just burst you down so quickly. So the playstyle might get shifted over time, but I don't mind it being strong. I think Ranger... I like seeing Ranger strong because it has been relatively weak in the PvP meta for a good amount of time. So I don't want to be too hasty on saying, right, delete this build from the game, you know? But there you go. Okay. Thief. Spectre is another specialization that has continued to perform well following the previous adjustments to its sustainability. And we're adjusting Shadow Force generation with the goal of making Spectres a bit more susceptible to enemy pressure. And by the way, this is actually a pretty damn significant nerf. Reduce the Shadow Force gain per initiative from 1% to 0.75%. Now, you do get a lot of Shadow Force from your Siphon and from using your wells, because you take the well shadow step trait. So whenever you shower step, you gain shadow force, and your wells are shower steps, right? So you do get value out of that. So this doesn't screw you over too much, but this certainly does just hit that stain a little bit, because definitely the issue with Spectre. The issue with Spectre, as a lot of top Thief players have pointed out correctly, like Syndrome, for example, it's not the damage output. The issue is the fact that it's just very, very durable, right? Like getting that 30k Shroud, it's pretty damn juicy, and allows you to survive while also delivering very high damage and maintaining that useful Thief mobility, kind of countering the weakness. Now, you know what's a little bit funny about this? Is that Spectre, I think, actually is fairly vulnerable in the current meta because of how mobile a lot of other things are. Stuff like Willbender and Untamed can really hunt it down pretty well. And Spectre doesn't have as much stealth access as other Thief builds, right? Like Daredevil before it, for example, or Deadeye. So it actually is an okay target a lot of the time. This might... if Sustain keeps getting nerfed on Spectre, you might see the playstyle shift a bit to a bit more stealth focused, so you actually have that disengage potential. Spectre's actually really interesting in the meta right now. I think it is viewed as a bit optional, right? For example, 55 didn't play it in the monthly. I think they probably would play a Thief in like a full tryhard game. You know, again, I spoke to Boyce about this. He said that you'd probably run Spectre. And instead of running like Willbender and Untamed, you'd run one or the other and then run a Spectre alongside with it. So it is still, it's still good, but it's good to see Thief actually be in this spot where it's not like, oh, if you don't have Thief, you're going to lose. Because that's how it was with Daredevil, by the way, guys. Daredevil was not optional. If you didn't have Daredevil, you're going to lose in PvP. And because the meta shifted a little bit, that's no longer the case. But yeah, this is, again, a good change. Like, I think nerfing down Sustain and making sure that we're in a fairly aggressive meta, not too aggressive, obviously, it's always a fine balance, is certainly a good call to go about doing this here as well. So there it is. Those are all of the PvP changes. But wait, there's a bonus one. Rune of the Trapper. Reduced stealth duration from 3 seconds to 1 second. This is an interesting change because it's targeted at making the game less obnoxious rather than actually nerfing things that are necessarily overperforming. This is directly targeted at Dragon Hunter and at Trapper Druid or Soul Beast. These builds were absolute pub stompers, man. Like, new players cannot deal with this. I think this is an amazing change, even though I think DH is cool and it's really fun to see play, actually, because of how explosive it is. I'm sorry, this rune is so toxic to new players on the Soul Beast and the DH builds that I think this is, like, unequivocally a good change. Like, stuff that like, gatekeeps new players and prevents new players from having fun is horrible. It's poison to ranked, and nerfing this down is a really good thing. I'm not gonna lie, that is a bit of a rip. This means DH is way harder to kill. Like, this was Rune of the Trapper was how it survived with Berserker Amulet, and without that, oh boy, ouch. Big ouch. Like, that is rip. That is rest in peace, man. I think Dragon Hunter and actually the Trapper Soul Beast are going to see significantly less play off that, because it just means that their vulnerability, which is actually being focused, right, and being killed, is now way more of a vulnerability. Both the Trapper build on Soul Beast and Druid and, of course, Dragon Hunter, if you actually get caught out, you're dead, right? And this is going to significantly modify that. You do still have the super speed, so you can kite with this, right? You can still go really fast, because bear in mind it gives you stealth and super speed, so there is that. But, poof, ooh, ouch, 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 ouch. That is a bit, that is a little bit painful. I'll say that. Unlucky. I hope that they actually do look at Dragon Hunter and change some of its mechanics or its abilities such that it can see play, because I think DH actually is a pretty cool spec. It's really fun to watch, I think. And I think it's actually surprisingly fair. Just the problem that was making it unfair was the stealth, right? Like being true shot from stealth, being DH pulled from stealth, right? That was the stuff that was making it really annoying to play against. So I think it can now be adjusted and be brought back into the game in a healthy state in that regard. And in general, like Trapper Soul Beast, it's kind of a meme build, right? Like, this is what held it together, so that build probably falls off. And it will probably still work pretty well against new people, because they do a lot of damage and the traps can still kind of win. But yeah, that's how it is. But anyway, that about wraps it up. Some solid changes. And, you know, I've also already done the challenge mode. I'll be reviewing that as well and obviously posting stuff like guides for that shortly. So stay tuned for all of that, guys. Go check out the other videos and learn about the Anka challenge mode. World's first try. Hell yeah, I love to see it. Very good stuff. But that's it. And I actually wasn't expecting much balance today, but these are some really good changes. I'm definitely excited to leap into World vs. World to see what's changed and to see the PvP meta evolve. I think that removing some of these key bunker classes is fantastic. I'm really impressed that the balance team has identified key problems and has actually tried to fix them in a major way, in a regular fashion. Like, this is actually crazy. A big positive here is that we're getting these regular patches now, as opposed to having to wait like 3 to 6 months between patches. And of course, we haven't even got to the big one coming up in June, where there's going to be major reworks to trait lines, abilities, and so on. And, you know, even adding quickness to Warrior and Alacrity to Ranger. So this is great. If we actually, if this keeps up continuously, I think this is, we're really on the road to a well-balanced and enjoyable experience in all areas of the game mode that actually stays fresh. Look, get that copium out of here, right? Copium in the chat is banned. But yeah, well done, ArenaNet. Okay, well done, ArenaNet. Bit of a fun patch here for sure, with all this balance stuff. Looking forward to the next one. That's it, gamers. That is it for all of that. Get in there and blast out that strike mission. Here we go. Massive gameplay. Love to see it. Ah, yes. There it is. Patch notes done. Go follow and subscribe and watch out all the other videos. Come back every single day. Watch live on the stream. Let's go. I'm not very good at that. Okay, I've got to improve my sellout phase. You know what I mean? That's my goal. That's my goal. That's the real challenge mode.